let's dive in. Today we're tackling something pretty fascinating, the U.S. Navy. Using Conrad Reicher's book, Steel Shield, we'll explore its history, its technology, and, the impact it's had on the globe.
You ready for this?
Absolutely I am. Let's go deep.
Awesome.
So when we talk about the Navy, it's easy to think, just ships and sailors, right? But there's so much more to it.
Oh yeah, way more. It's a story of resilience, of adapting, and always pushing to be better. You'll be surprised how it connects to events that shape the world, like seriously.
So let's go back to the very beginning. Riker takes us all the way back to 1775. The American Revolution's in full swing. A brand new nation going up against the biggest, baddest Navy out there, the British. What were the chances of winning?
Honestly, slim to none. But here's the thing. Even trying to create a Navy, especially one as, let's say, scrappy as it was back then, says a lot. It was like a statement. This new nation, they were ready to fight for their survival. And the sea, well, that was going to be a major battleground.
That's where the USS Alfred enters the scene. The very first ship, officially put into service by the Continental Congress.
Exactly. Compared to, like, a modern aircraft carrier, it might not seem like much. But the Alfred, that's the birth of the U.S. Navy right there. It's that underdog spirit. Making do with what you've got, and then boom, achieving what everyone thought was impossible.
Whole scrappy, making do with what you've got attitude. Does that connect to the Navy we see today?
Totally. That origin story, it highlights how important it is to be adaptable, to be resilient. Those qualities, they've defined how the Navy's evolved over centuries.
Makes sense. When you're going up against a giant, you got to be resourceful, right? And speaking of giants, Riker mentions the Naval Act of 1794. What's the deal with that?
Oh, that was huge. It gave the green light to build 6 frigates, including the super famous USS Constitution. That ship, get this, it's still around today. And these weren't just any old ships. They were designed to be the top dogs of their time. A clear sign that this new nation, they meant business on the world stage.
The USS Constitution, old Ironsides, that's a serious legacy. It's mind-blowing that a ship built that long ago is still floating around.
It shows you how skilled those early shipbuilders were, how forward-thinking they were. But it also makes a really important point. The Navy was all about building for the future, not just for right now. That drive to innovate, to push the limits of technology, it's a constant thread through the Navy's whole story.
So we're starting to see a pattern here. Resourcefulness, innovation, and a drive to be a major power. But how did this all play out globally? Did this brand new Navy actually make a dent in world events?
More than you might think. Actually, the Navy's impact goes way beyond warfare. We're talking diplomacy, international relations, the whole shebang. Riker even talks about this thing called, get this, gunboat diplomacy.
Gunboat diplomacy. Okay, I need a little explanation on that one. Sounds kind of aggressive,
Yeah, maybe it sounds old school, but the idea's still around today. Picture this. A big, powerful warship shows up off the coast of some country that's in chaos. Just that presence, without even firing a single shot, can change things. Send a message. Influence what happens. That's gunboat diplomacy in action.
So it's all about flexing your muscles, showing your power, without actually starting a fight. Like saying, hey, we're here, we're watching, and we could do something if we wanted to. Pretty strong move for a new nation trying to find its place.
Exactly. Riker's argument is that the Navy has been a key player in U.S. foreign policy for centuries, using that kind of power.
Okay, so the Navy's making itself known worldwide. Where do we see this gunboat diplomacy playing out in history?
Well, Riker throws out a bunch of examples, and it's fascinating to see how the Navy's role evolves over time. He starts with the Barbary Wars, early 1800s, the U.S. Navy going head-to-head with, wait for it, pirates in the Mediterranean.
Pirates? You mean like actual pirates with eye patches and parrots and all that?
You got it. But not the romanticized Hollywood kind. These guys were brutal. They attacked ships, demanded payments, took hostages, the real deal.
Wow, talk about a trial by fire for a new Navy.
You said it. But the Navy stepped up. These early fights, so far from home, showed the world that the U.S. was serious about protecting its interests, even overseas. It was a big step towards becoming that global force.
It's wild to think that pirate encounters shaped the Navy's future. And speaking of shaping the future, Riker talks about the Navy's impact on something I wouldn't expect: scientific exploration. I mean, you don't usually think Navy and science at the same time.
You might be shocked by how involved the Navy is in research. I mean, some major scientific breakthroughs have come straight from the Navy's work.
Right, now I'm intrigued. What kind of science are we talking here?
Think about it. The Navy operates in some of the most extreme places on Earth, right? The vast oceans, the deep sea, the Arctic. To handle those environments, they need to understand them. So they pour resources into research.
So because they had to figure out how to navigate these crazy places, they ended up making scientific discoveries.
Exactly. Take oceanography, for example. The Navy's research on currents, underwater acoustics, and all the life in the sea. It's helped them, sure, but it's also advanced what we know about the oceans as a whole.
That's really cool. I had no idea the Navy played such a big role in oceanography. What other areas of science have they impacted?
Their work in meteorology is another great example. Think about it. They absolutely need to know what the weather's doing for their operation. But all that data they gather, it helps make weather forecasting better for everyone.
It's like a bonus effect of what they're already doing, right? They're out there collecting data that benefits everyone in the end.
Yeah.
It's giving me a whole new perspective on the Navy.
That's the best part of a deep dive like this. You get to peel back the layers and see how everything connects. And there's so much more to discover as we go through the Navy's history and its impact.
I'm ready to see where we go next.
Welcome back. Last time we went through the early days of the U.S. Navy, from its, kind of underdog beginnings to becoming a force on the world stage. We saw how being innovative and being willing to show its power shaped its early path.
Yeah. Learning about the Navy taking on pirates in the Mediterranean and contributing to those scientific discoveries, oceanography and meteorology, was fascinating. But there's so much more to discover. In Conrad Reicher's book, Steel Shield, it takes us deeper.
This time we're going into a pivotal moment, a turning point, World War II. This global conflict really put the Navy to the test and changed its role in the world for sure.
World War II, I mean, everyone knows something about it, but I'm really interested to see how the Navy specifically played into it all. What were some of those key moments, those turning points that Riker talks about?
Well, there's the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1940. That was a defining moment. It was devastating, crippled the Pacific Fleet, and boom, the U.S. was in the war.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
It's one of those events that's just like seared into our collective memory. The surprise, the huge losses. It must have been a total shock to the nation.
It was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that even a powerful country like the U.S., they could be vulnerable. But Riker points out, Pearl Harbor also ignited this wave of determination, this resolve. The Navy, even though they took a huge hit, they bounced back. They rebuilt. They were determined to, avenge the attack and defeat those Axis powers.
So out of that tragedy came this renewed sense of purpose. How did the Navy adapt and respond to this huge global conflict?
The war, it demanded innovation, fast innovation, and a whole new way of thinking about strategy. They had to adapt to fighting on multiple fronts. The vast Pacific, the icy Atlantic.
That's massive. Two completely different theaters of war, each with its own unique set of challenges. How did they manage to be effective in both?
It took incredible logistics, technological ingenuity, and just pure grit. Riker talks about the immense shipbuilding effort during the war. Shipyards were cranking out everything: battleships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, you name it, at a pace that was unheard of before.
Just the scale of that, the whole country mobilizing to support the war effort. It's hard to even imagine.
It was a national effort, and the Navy was leading the charge. Riker really emphasizes how so many people contribute. The shipbuilders, the engineers, the sailors, everyone working around the clock, making sure the Navy had what it needed to fight and win.
It's like the whole nation was united in that effort. But beyond shipbuilding, what were some of the key technological advances that really changed the game for the Navy during the war?
Well, radar, for one, that was a game changer. It meant ships could detect enemy aircraft and other ships way beyond what they could see. Huge tactical advantage. And then there was sonar, which completely revolutionized how they fought submarines.
Radar and sonar, those technologies completely changed naval warfare.
Absolutely. And Riker's point is that these advancements weren't just about getting an edge in battle. They were about saving lives. Radar and sonar, they meant the Navy could see threats coming sooner, react faster, and ultimately fewer casualties.
So the Navy's commitment to innovation really paid off. It's not just about bigger, better weapons. It's about using technology to protect their own and achieve those strategic goals. But beyond technology, what about the human element? Riker talks about the Battle of Midway. What made that battle so important?
Midway was a turning point in the Pacific War. It was a clash of the Titans, a battle fought mostly by aircraft launched from those massive carriers. The U.S. Navy, even though they were outnumbered, they crushed the Japanese fleet, sank 4 of their carriers.
Wow, 4 carriers in one battle. That had to be a decisive victory.
It was. Riker describes the incredible bravery of those American pilots and sailors at Midway. They were facing incredible odds, but they pulled it off. They turned the tide of the war in the Pacific.
So we see that theme of resourcefulness and determination again. Even against a bigger force, they found a way to win. It speaks to a certain mindset, that refusal to give up when things get tough.
That's the core of the Navy's character. Riker argues that this spirit, it wasn't just forged in those big battles like Midway. It was all those smaller engagements, those tough convoy duties, the long stretches at sea. It all shaped their identity.
It's easy to get caught up in the big battles, the turning points, right?
Yeah.
But you're right, it's those everyday sacrifices, the quiet heroism that often get overlooked. But they're just as crucial to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And Riker makes sure to highlight those stories, the unsung heroes, the acts of courage that might not have made the news, but were just as important in the grand scheme of things.
So World War II was a real test for the Navy. It tested what they were capable of, pushed them to innovate, and in the end, reshaped their role in the world. But Riker doesn't just focus on the battles and technology. He also looks at how the war impacted the sailors themselves, the people who served.
He does. And it's this powerful reminder that behind every ship, every battle, every victory, there are people, men and women who sacrificed, endured hardship, and put their lives on the line for their country.
Okay, let's talk about that human element. What kind of insights does Riker share about what those sailors went through during the war?
Well, he talks about the camaraderie, the bond that forms between shipmates when you're going through something like that, the crucible of combat. He describes the long deployments, being away from family and loved ones, the constant threat of attack. He also talks about the mental and emotional toll of war, the trauma, the grief, how tough it can be to come back to civilian life after seeing those kinds of horrors.
It's a side of war we don't often see, that emotional and psychological impact on those who serve.
It's such an important part of the story. Riker makes sure those experiences are heard, reminding us that the cost of war isn't just measured in ships and planes lost, but also in the lives forever changed by what they went through.
It's a sobering reminder of the human cost of war, and it makes me appreciate those sacrifices even more.
It's a powerful testament to their resilience, to their dedication to duty, and it's something Riker really hammers home throughout the book. The Navy isn't just about hardware and technology, it's about the people, their stories, their sacrifice.
We've gone from the Navy's humble beginnings to their crucial role in World War II. It's been a fascinating journey so far, full of stories of innovation, courage, and resilience. But our deep dive's not over yet.
Nope, we've still got more to explore. Next time, we'll delve into the Navy's role in the world after the war, from the Cold War all the way to today. We'll see how they've adapted to new threats, new tech, new challenges.
I can't wait to see how the Navy's story unfolds. It's clear this institution has had a huge impact on the world, and it's still shaping things today. I'm excited for what we'll learn in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. It's been an amazing journey, exploring the U.S. Navy's story from its very beginning during the American Revolution all the way through its critical role in World War II. We've seen how innovation, resilience, and that unwavering dedication to their mission, those things have shaped this institution for centuries.
And as we head into the final part of our deep dive, with Conrad Riker's Steel Shield as our guide, we're turning our attention to the future. What's next for the U.S. Navy in a world that just keeps on changing?
That's exactly what I'm thinking about. We've seen how the Navy's adapted to past challenges, but what about the 21st century? What are the new realities they're facing now?
Riker paints this picture of a world where, the lines between traditional warfare and those non-traditional threats are getting blurry. Attacks, the rise of, non-state actors, and all this advanced technology spreading around. These are the kinds of challenges that need a totally new approach to naval strategy.
Okay, let's break that down. We all know about cyber attacks in our own lives, but how does that even apply to the Navy? I mean, it's not like someone's going to hack a battleship from their basement. Right.
You'd be surprised. The Navy, they depend heavily on all these complex computer systems for everything. Navigation, communication, weapons, intelligence gathering, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And those systems, they can be attacked. And the results, well, they could be catastrophic.
So it's not just about physical warfare anymore. It's like the battlefield's expanded into the digital world, cyberspace.
Yeah.
What's the Navy doing to protect themselves in this new cyber domain?
Riker explains that they're putting a ton of resources into cyber defense, developing super strong encryption, training people to recognize and respond to cyber threats, even working with other agencies, sharing intel and strategy.
So it's this constant race to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, just like in the real world. But what about those non-state actors you mentioned?
That's another huge change. We're not just talking about conflicts between countries anymore. Terrorist organizations, criminal networks, even pirates. Yeah, pirates are still a thing. They all pose real threats to maritime security. The Navy's got to be ready for all of it.
It's wild to think that piracy is still a threat in the 21st century. I mean, we talked about those Barbary pirates earlier.
It is, and it's not just them. Think about all those trade routes crisscrossing the oceans. They're essential to the global economy, and they're vulnerable. The Navy plays a vital role in protecting those shipping lanes, making sure things keep moving.
So the Navy's role, it's gotten so much bigger. It's gone way beyond traditional warfare to deal with all these different threats and challenges. What about technology? We've seen how the Navy's been at the forefront of innovation in the past. What's coming up in terms of new tech?
Riker talks about unmanned systems becoming more and more important. Drones, underwater vehicles, autonomous platforms, stuff that can operate in dangerous situations without risking sailors' lives.
Drones at sea. That makes sense. You can send them into dangerous areas, gather intel, even engage targets without putting people at risk.
Exactly. And it's not just drones. They're looking into all sorts of cutting-edge tech, directed energy weapons, artificial intelligence, you name it, all focused on maintaining their technological edge in a world that's constantly evolving.
It sounds like the future of naval warfare is going to be completely different from anything we've seen before. But technology is only part of it, right? Riker also talks about how important strategic partnerships are too.
He does. Alliances, they're critical in a world where everything's connected. Riker talks about strengthening the partnerships we already have, like that special relationship with the UK, and building new alliances with countries who are invested in maritime security.
We talked about RIMPAC before, those huge naval exercises with tons of countries participating. That's a perfect example of cooperation in action.
It is. And it goes beyond exercises, too. Sharing intelligence, coordinating operations, doing joint patrols, these are all key parts of a strong network of alliance.
It really highlights that in today's world, no country can stand alone. Cooperation, working together, those are the keys to tackling global issues. So new threats, new technology, new alliance. It seems like the Navy's facing a whole new kind of future. But Riker also emphasizes how important it is for the Navy to hold on to its core values, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. Resilience, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to their mission. Riker says these are the foundation of the Navy's success, and they'll be even more crucial going forward.
It's fascinating how those values, those things that were shaped way back in the early days, are still so relevant in the 21st century. It speaks to a sense of continuity, a tradition that's woven into the Navy's identity.
That's a great point. The Navy has this incredible history, and it's important to honor that legacy while also being open to change and adapting to the new realities of the world. Riker's argument is that finding that balance between tradition and innovation, that's going to be the key to their success in the future.
It's like they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The Navy's facing a whole bunch of new challenges, but those core values that have guided them through the centuries, those are just as important as ever.
That's really the heart of Steel Shield. It's a celebration of the U.S. Navy's past, present, and future. It's a powerful reminder of the role this institution has played in shaping our world and how it still stands as a symbol of American strength, resilience, and that commitment to freedom.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the U.S. Navy. It's been an incredible journey, full of insights, discoveries, and a newfound appreciation for the men and women who serve. If you're as captivated by this deep dive as we are, definitely check out Conrad Riker's book, Steel Shield, the U.S. Navy's Unwavering Guard.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to really understand the Navy, its past, its present, and where it's headed.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.